1962, I was in the 8th grade in New Concord High School.
It was a real safe kind of place. I think we all felt safe. We felt like we had lots of freedom to do things. The other interesting thing, I think, is that when we did get in trouble, as teenage boys tend to get in trouble, you know, how serious it is sometimes different. But when we did get in trouble, somebody would see you, and somebody, whoever saw you, knew the other person's parents, and they didn't go to the police, but they would call the parents, and they would say, "I saw your kid do this." And you'd get it from your parents, and that's kind of how discipline worked, and it was very effective.
My dad was a fighter pilot in World War II also, and he and John used to sit outside at night and talk about fighter planes and jets. And it was always fun back in that time period because we were always watching the satellite go over. You could see it moving in the stars.
That whole generation is a special generation. If you think back to where they'd been, they'd gone through World War II and then the Korean War.
Just had the feeling that, gosh, it's exciting, just hope that nothing goes wrong.
Yeah, I think I was aware of it, but I'm not sure if we were really aware of it at the time that it was happening, or whether it was told to us afterwards that there might have been a problem with that.
Then all of a sudden, it was relief.
I don't know if it's from my experience of listening on the radio or just reading about it, was the whole re-entry into the atmosphere of the Earth. And what a tense time that was.
One of the things that, they set up a TV in the gymnasium at Concord High School for people to observe the activity with the space flight that day.
Prior to that launch, everybody had been disappointed because John Glenn had not been chosen to take the first or the second trip up into space, which Grissom and Shepard did. But after he was chosen to do the orbital flight, very high, and everybody was really enthused. Is a fantastic human being. I can remember in 1971, which was 9 years afterwards, I was coming back from basic training with a buddy of mine. We flew into Dayton, immediately took off, landed in Columbus. And for some reason, John Glenn was in the airport. And here I am walking through with my buddy, we're in our uniforms, and he looked over and he said, "Hi, Tom." And the guy I was with, he had to have a picture of us together. He was just awestruck. He did not know that I knew John Glenn. He's an amazing guy.
At the time that I was growing up, of course the John and Annie Glenn family had moved on, but they would come back obviously to visit their parents. And their two children were a little bit older than I was, but we would kind of play together when they would come back and visit and stuff. I remember Senator Glenn's mother very well. She was just a wonderful person.
went to bed Friday night, and 4 o'clock in the morning, what is that noise? And down front of the house here, I discovered that there were people they lived around Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The man, wife, and children had come from Pittsburgh the night before, and they had arrived in New Concord, and they were just out there in front talking, and there was other people come, and the town was quite full.
I don't think as an 11-year-old kid I could really appreciate it. I think the adults were pretty excited about it. It was in the Cold War era. You had the space race going on with the Russians. And I think as a little kid, as I think about it, I kind of likened it to an athletic contest. It was like, well, the Russians did this, and now we're going to do this, and we're going to beat them. You know, it was a game. I didn't realize the importance of all of that.
Didn't go down to the parade. A bunch of us in the 8th grade class went down. It was just jammed. It was like an obstacle course trying to get your way through people so you could see the parade.
60 or 70,000 people, I don't know what the number was, but if you can picture that many people crowded into this little town, it was pretty amazing, especially for somebody that had grown up in a place of 2,000 to witness. I remember climbing a tree on Main Street to get above the crowds lining Main Street to be able to see part of the parade. And the only thing I remember about the parade route was Main Street, and somehow I think they ended up in, you know, what's now John Glenn Gym. It wasn't obviously named that at the time. And I remember climbing down out of the tree then after they'd passed and kind of running along with the route. And it was, again, come back to my earlier comment, the feeling of safety in a place like New Concord. My parents didn't worry about, you know, me running around. Of course, I was with a couple buddies. I certainly didn't think about any kind of safety issues when you have crowds of 70,000. I'd never do that with my daughter today.
The streets were filled with people, about 8 to 10 rows deep, and they went from up here right by the Methodist Church there on what we called the Lower Bloomfield Road. They call it Liberty Street now, and went down Liberty, down Main Street. There was people up in buildings, and some was even in trees.
Where are we going to get the flags and the bunting and all that kind of stuff? But we found out all you needed was John Glenn and Annie. You didn't need all the rest of the stuff. So the General Motors sent down 12 brand new Oldsmobile convertibles for the parade. The Marine Corps sends down 12 master sergeants to be the chauffeurs. And when Mr. Glenn was advised that he would be chauffeured in a new car by a Marine Corps sergeant, he said, "Well, I'm sorry." He said, "I already have my driver. He promised he'd pick me up." That was me.
Well, it was in the spotlight. If you told somebody asked you where you were from, and you said, "I'm from New Concord," they said, "Oh, John Glenn, that's where he's from." It got in the national spotlight.
I think it was something that kind of pulled people together, made them be proud of accomplishments that the U.S. had done.